And that's something I learned. Most people are nice and wonderful,
Aw.
you know. And
Hi, I'm Lynn Widmeyer, and today I am with Jim Cummins,
hello.
who has has many special accomplishments. He's a retired biologist. I have to read this from the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, and he is a musician. He plays the harmonica under the alias Fat Jimmy. But we are not here today to talk about either of those accomplishments. We are here today to talk about a fantastic trip that Jim took 50 years ago.
That's right. It's the anniversary, 50-year anniversary.
He traveled 1,000 miles.
Virginia Beach to Panama City,
Virginia
Florida.
Beach to Panama City, Florida. Not on a train, not on a bus, not on a plane,
Not on a bike,
on a horse.
on a horse.
So let's just start off, Jim, and talk about what the heck inspired you to make this trip.
Well, there were a variety of factors. I was 21 years old, so that's a good time to travel. You know, you're not really tied down too much. So I wanted to do an adventure. But there was also a very important event that had happened in my life 4 years prior to that. I was in the backseat of a car when a drunk driver plowed into the car
Oh, no.
and wrapped us around a pole. And I was literally wrapped around the pole with my arms and legs were wrapped around the pole. Both my arms and both my legs were broken. Compound fractures where the bone sticks out. Took them over 3 hours to cut me out. So I barely
my
lived,
gosh.
but I survived. It took me about almost a year to recover.
So how did this inspire you to take this trip on horseback down highways and byways for 1,000 miles on the eastern seaboard?
Well, the person that hit us was very poor and didn't have insurance. And fortunately, we were the first people that qualified for the Maryland, accident was in Maryland, the Maryland uninsured drivers thing. There were 4 of us in the car, so we were all hurt badly. And but we had enough to cover the medical expenses, but I never had any pain and suffering kind of money. But to me, this was something I wanted to do to recover from the pain and suffering that I had from that accident.
This was way before post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Oh, that's right. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, we didn't.
In fact, I got no physical therapy. That's another thing.
God, that's
I got that with
amazing.
no physical therapy. They just let me out of the hospital as soon as I could use
See
crutches.
ya.
Exactly. I've never been to the South, so I wanted to explore the Deep South. I lived in Virginia Beach, but I wanted to explore the Deep South.
Well, how did you get your horse? Horse was your companion. Apparently, nobody really wanted to do this with you, did they, Jim?
No, I did try. I asked a few people that I knew. Of course, it was something that, you're going to spend months doing this. And I kind of knew from the outset it was probably just going to be me. And it was. And I bought a horse. I just sort of came upon the idea one day, so to speak, that, I worked in a Western theme park in the summers after I recovered from the accident. So I liked horses, and I'm a natural horseman. And just something I said, my ancestors used to ride long distances.
Why can't I?
I should do that again. And I researched it. Libraries didn't have internet, so I researched it. And nowadays there's a really nice internet. The Long Riders Guild, just look up longridersguild.com, I think it is. And they've got tons of information about how you can do this now. And I'm a member of that, a long-term member of that since they started it. And back then I just used libraries, both in college and
No cell phones.
no cell phones,
No Google Maps.
no maps. I used state highway maps. I tried to think, I used topo maps, but they were just too big, and so I just used state highway maps.
What day did you embark on this great
I left
adventure?
on January 27th. I left in the winter. I like riding in the winter. Because there's no bugs. It's cold. In fact, it got to be real cold. For the south, I figured I'm headed south. It's going to take me a couple months. It's going to warm up.
How much snow could you run into?
How much snow could I run into? Yeah. And so I started off, and I actually wanted the evening I left, a good friend of mine was transporting me to where I'd kept my horse. Because I was leaving from that place. I didn't have a vehicle. And that night before, we went to see a movie. It was a brand new movie, Deliverance.
Oh my
That's
gosh!
the movie I saw upon leaving. So yeah, it was ominous start. And I was actually shot at when I was riding my horse. Right off the bat, about 4 days into it, somebody drove by and shot at
Fortunately, you
us.
say that was your worst.
That was my worst one. Yeah, I was wondering, well, when am I going to go to the South? Because I had long hair at the time, but I dressed appropriately in cowboy in
Full
I wore
cowboy
Western
regalia.
gear that was winter Western gear. I did have a navy peacoat, a wool navy peacoat on that was good, but I was shot at. But after that, I didn't really have any significant problems with people. There were some people in the South because I had long hair that didn't like me, but most people, the horse was I called her my social vehicle. She allowed me to ride and to meet people, and that's what I really wanted to do, was to see the countryside and meet people. I wasn't going out in a wilderness journey. This was a people journey.
How were you thinking this would help you get over that trauma of the accident?
It just gave me time to think about it. I actually, one of the other components of the accident was I had a near-death experience. And even it wasn't until 75 when that became more or less common knowledge. At the time that my horseback trip, I really didn't know about them. I didn't know anybody had them, so I was kind of embarrassed. Anyway, I was sort of thinking through my near-death experience because it was a real significant event in my life.
So you're working that
changed
through.
Me. I was a different person after.
I mean, how many miles a day?
We probably averaged around 25. Sometimes like 23 to 28. But around 25 was what we normally would make. There were some days shorter, some days a little bit longer, but not many. And you had to walk your horse. You don't want to, you can't, for a long distance, I researched, you can't gallop along. You can ride a horse 100 miles in a day, but then the horse is
Yeah, we wouldn't run. Pogo, this is Pogo.
Yeah, we named the horse Pogo.
We want to take care of Pogo.
Yeah, she was a buckskin quarter horse, a 7-year-old.
So how did you plot your route each day? I mean, there was no Google Maps at this point.
There weren't Google Maps. I had a general idea of where I was going. I knew I needed to head inland to get out of the tidal rivers. I had to cross bridges. In the South, there are going to be many bridges to cross.
Man. I was reading your journals because you kept a journal. I was so impressed at the number of people that took you in and your horse. I mean, it wasn't just you that bring in Pogo and feed him and bed him down and feed you.
That's right. The unfortunate part of my plan was in the afternoons I had just to carry the burlap bag to get grain. I knew I could get pasture, but I needed grain for the horse every day. So I just would look for a farm that had cows or horses, and I would ride up to it and ask to buy a scoop of grain. That's all I needed for the night to put in the bag. And about 2/3 of the times, the farmers said, "Come, why don't you stay with us tonight?" And so I stayed with them and met them. And that happened a lot of times. Sometimes it didn't work out, but a lot of times it worked out. And it was nice to meet people of all persuasions,
backgrounds.
Yeah, from
your overnight accommodations that you carried with you were like what, a bedroll?
Yeah, I had a new tent and a sleeping bag, and I had a blanket for the horse because it was winter. I put a blanket on her and tie her up, and usually I would look for, when I had to stay out in the woods, so to speak, I'd look for abandoned farmhouses, which they dotted the landscape. They weren't hard to find. About 4 o'clock, this is winter, so it'd get dark later. I'd look for an abandoned farmhouse. I'd ride up to the farmhouse, see if there's anybody to ask permission to use it. Sometimes I didn't see anybody, but I would just set up my tent and chain her up. And then those abandoned farmhouses had grass. They had tall grass around them. So I had, pasture for the horse. And then I would spend the night there, and I would pretty much be doing that as darkness fell, and then as soon as I'd be up before light, and we'd be getting ready, and we'd hit the road.
Well, it's absolutely amazing. You left January.
Yeah, and I got there.
And when did you get
end of March and arrived there
to Panama City?
Yeah, the end of March.
Now it's been 50 years.
Yeah.
Since you've done this. Mm-hmm. As you reflect back, did you get what you wanted from the trip in terms of what you were seeking?
I got a very good lifelong lessons. While I did run into some rough people, but most of the people I met were just wonderful people, and that's something I learned. Most people are nice and wonderful.
Aww.
And the exceptions don't make the rule. The people that caused me grief were very rare, and it was just nice to meet people and to see the South, and understand a little bit more about it. Well, it ended up, when I got to Panama City and I stayed at a campground, so I said, I got to sell Pogo. I knew I was going to have to sell her.
Oh, that must have been rough.
Sort of, but again, I thought of my ancestors. When they used to take long trips, they would do that. So I didn't have a farm or anything. I knew at the end of this trip I had to sell her. But I was at this campground. I advertised in the paper, contact Jim Cummins, campsite 34,
Horse
camp-
for sale.
And I wasn't getting any responses, not oddly enough. But a reporter came and talked to me, had an interview, and it was a nice little interview. And then the owner of the newspaper was the one that, he had two daughters, 14 and a 16-year-old daughter, 1,000-acre ranch. They bought Pogo.
I think there ought to be a statue of Pogo somewhere. I mean, 1,000 miles going on roadways and byways.
Got a wonderful picture of her. I love this picture of her standing by with the swamp in the background.
I volunteer at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, and one of the pictures we have on the wall is one of the first person who walked the Appalachian Trail its entire length, which was in 1948. It was Earl Schaefer. And they said, well, why are you walking the entire length of the trail? Because until then, no one had done it. And he said, I'm walking off the war. And I think of your trip doing the same thing. You did your 1,000-mile to walk off that accident.
I think that's right. I think that's a very good comparison. I think that's a good one. But no, the people... The horse if I'd ridden a bicycle, that might have been a problem. But the horse was, just great. And it was nice meeting all the people and learning what my ancestors did, how they got around. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this absolutely wonderful adventure. And I'm so happy that we can celebrate the 50th year anniversary.
I'm very honored that you've selected me to be one of the people. This marvelous county of Jefferson County has so many neat people. I'm glad that you've selected me.
Well,
it's not my hometown, but I've lived here for almost 50 years.
Well, there you go.
So,
thank you, Jim.
Thank you.